And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact have kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media?
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. And to me, that is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States?
Wow, guys, if you're like me, you had to go back and listen to that again.
What we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. That is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States? Hammer it out of existence.
It's not a surprise to me that John actually thinks that way about our society and how we govern ourselves. But what surprises me is that he's become so blatant, and people like him have become so blatant that they're willing to just have casual conversations about it, when they're at these global agenda meetings, whatever it is that they like to do with their spare time. I think that is a sign that things are going to get a little crazy in the future. But I don't normally like to discuss politics on this channel, and I do have a different subject that I'm going to talk about today. But people have been asking, because we had a couple hurricanes come through here. The last one, we nearly got struck by a tornado in our house, but it passed us. And what we experienced here was a lot of flooding, but it wasn't anything compared to what some of our friends experienced out in Western North Carolina. But people have been asking me, what my thoughts are on the response to the area. Has the Biden administration chosen not to go into specific areas? And I don't think that that's necessarily it. If you look at Hurricane Ian response time, if you look at the situation in East Palestine, Ohio, the Biden administration almost cleared East Palestine, Ohio, until people like J.D. Vance were going in there going, look, this water's polluted. These people are, facing a serious situation here.
Hey guys, so I'm here at Leslie Run, and there are dead worms and dead fish all throughout this water. So, something I just discovered is that if you scrape the creek bed, it's like chemical is coming out of the ground. Can you come here? And let me just show this to people. I don't know if you're going to see this on camera, but watch this. Just see that chemical pop out of the creek. This is disgusting. And the fact that we have not cleaned up the train crash, the fact that these chemicals are still seeping in the ground is an insult to the people who live in East Palestine. Do not forget these people. We've got to keep applying pressure. That's how we're going to fix this problem. Thank you.
And, even then they had a delayed reaction getting out there. I feel like, you know, the current administration, and that includes everybody, is just not, well, they definitely lack experience when it comes to handling catastrophes. And we've seen that with almost every single one that has occurred under this administration. Now, Trump was more on top of it. You know, he was more responsive. He was geared up leading up to the storm. You know, and that's one of the other things with Hurricane Helene. When we look at the lead up to the storm, I was supposed to lead some kids on a canoe trip, and I told everybody, you know, the night before, I was like, look, we can't go. This was the night before the hurricane. We weren't going to go until a day after the hurricane. I was like, we can't do this. We just had a hurricane come through here, the remnants of a tropical storm. We got 6 to 8 inches of rain. The ground still hasn't dried. There's nowhere for the water to go. If we got 2 inches of rain from Helene, which we got a heck of a lot more than that, but regardless, the amount of rain that we would get, it has nowhere to go. So it's just going to go into the rivers. It's going to make the rivers extremely dangerous. We shouldn't even be planning on heading in the direction of any rivers the day or two after a storm. So it surprises me, you know, when we're sitting here talking about it, we understand hydrology, how it works. We understand that the water at that point in North Carolina already had nowhere to go, right, across the state. We also went through a period of drought earlier this year, which actually makes it worse, you know, is because you go through a period of drought and then you start getting hit with a lot of rain. You know, that soil is still, you know, your topsoil is still recovering from the drought. It's just not soaking up as much water as it normally would. So it surprises me that more people weren't warned ahead of time, and I don't know whose fault that is. But I feel like it was common sense to those of us who live in storm-prone areas. But, you know, when it comes to these types of situations, you know, even when Trump was in office, he would do everything he could, which would get you supplies, and he's doing that with Helene as well. But the federal bureaucracies are horrible to work with, okay? After this last hurricane, our pond dams are completely gone. We have tried going through some of the FEMA plans for agriculture and USDA plans to rebuild those dams. But the paperwork, the bureaucracy involved just isn't worth it to us. We'd rather just save up money, rent some equipment, go out there and do it ourselves. I think it's concerning that there are so many people in society who expect the government to be there for them when things go bad. And that's not how it works out. You know, Prepper Camp, which is interesting, was going on right in the middle of Hurricane Helene. My wife and I reached out to them. I don't know if you guys have met the folks who run Prepper Camp, but they're very nice people. And we were concerned that, you know, everything was okay. We couldn't get in touch with them for several days because, you know, a lot of North Carolina didn't have cell phone power, but we knew that where they were at the time of the storm, we knew it was a very actively hit area. And they responded, oh, we're good. Finally, several days later, we got stuck out there, but, you know, it was Prepper Camp, so we just continued on with our classes. You know, what else are we to do? And we had to, you know, cut down some trees and live off generators for a while because everybody got stuck out there, but we're preppers, you know, it was no big deal. We just continued on. It was fun. But that is a mentality of people who are constantly prepared for whatever comes their way. And I think that sometimes there are people who thrive in the shock and awe of the moment, you know, and by thrive, I mean they feed off of that. They feed off of the experience. And then there are those who, regardless of whatever comes at them, they don't want it to stop them from doing what they feel needs to be done, that they're just going to continue on as if nothing hit them. And that's kind of how we feel in our house. You know, we have a lot of power backup. Our house is positioned in a place that even when the rivers flood around here, we're well above the flood lines. We have other challenges, but we're prepared. We're ready for them. You know, when we hear your hurricanes coming, it's not like we freak out about it. But unfortunately, you know, in the situation in North Carolina, I don't think that people realized how bad that flooding was going to be ahead of time. I don't think that they were given the proper notice of it. Part of that too is Helene increased to Category 4 at the last moment, which a lot of people weren't expecting. But you know, when I hear people complaining, well, the government's not getting here fast enough to help us, I think we should all have, at all times, at least a bug-out bag of everything that we need, so when this type of stuff happens to us, we are well prepared. And I'll do another video on hurricane prep. You know, we live in an area that gets hit by multiple storms a year, and we've always been perfectly fine. But there are things that we do to just have on hand that would help us in the event of power outages and other things. And I actually think that this winter is going to be one of those tough winters where you're going to want to have some of this stuff on hand. Anyway, guys, we've been working on some great podcasts that are being put together in the background that we'll be getting out over the next couple weeks. Shauna's been working with me on some of them, so you'll get to see her as well. Some great interviews, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun here on Yanasa TV during the month of October. So stay tuned in, and I'll get some more content out to you as soon as possible.
You know, at the end of the day, people need to do what they need to do to feed their families, and that's wonderful no matter what that looks like. But for people that are really wanting to care where their meat's coming from, that are wanting the best quality, it's farmers every time.
What's the alternative? They all come from farms, but
Absolutely.
Can you specify?
No, they don't. They come from the grocery store around here.
Well, and actually, that's what's crazy now. They actually grow meat in labs now. It's a thing. So, I mean, you know, I guess that's a compliment, right? That people are mimicking you, that they're trying to create you in other ways, that even though it's not real.
I didn't think about the aspect of how far-reaching the fur ban was. I knew it was impacting, because even on their website, they only talk about, well, it might impact one business. But what you just described is it would impact a lot of businesses, big box stores, almost everybody.
Let's see through this. Let's see through this mirage. This is not about mink coats. This is about ending meat production across America.